Welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Inside Track. Obviously this morning is myself, as always, Ryan Charlesworth, with my great buddy Glenda, and we've got an amazing guest on this morning with Alan. Welcome both.
Thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure to join your podcast this morning from Dublin.
Fantastic. And Glenda, are you well?
Very good, Ryan. Nice and relaxed and refreshed.
Happy days, building up to Christmas, so love it. So this will probably go live or go out just after Christmas, but so Merry Christmas to everybody. Well, it's great to have you on, Alan. Now obviously I've seen your stuff for a long while. You're an industry stalwart. You've been around a while, working with IHRSA and your Westwood club. So do you want to just give us an insight into who you are, a bit of your background, so our viewers can understand who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I entered the industry like us all when I was 20 years of age, and back then that was probably about 100 years ago. You know, there was very few gyms. There was certainly even less leisure centres, and even if there was the public leisure centres, they were certainly very poor, maybe a swimming pool. So when I entered the industry, I was very, very lucky to get a job as a fitness instructor. It was the very early days. I was lucky then to, by accident, end up in sales. And after about a year, I ended up in sales. So I didn't see it at the time, but sales was a very, very good way to learn the business side of the industry.
Absolutely.
It was a very quick path, like a lot of the big chains that came afterwards, to move into management. And so, you know, I took like duck to water with sales. I enjoyed it. I applied myself fully. And we grew that club, and it was hugely, hugely successful. At the time, it was considered one of the most profitable per square foot clubs in Europe. It was about 8,000 square feet with about 3,500 members.
Which club was that?
That was Dundrum Gym in Dublin. It was sold for an absolute fortune.
Was it?
And it was famous at the time because it was just so profitable. And we were a real sales and marketing organization, and you know, the fitness first type thing, a lot of sales training. And then I during that, I actually went back to university then for 5 years to study marketing. But I stayed working in the fitness industry with most people who I graduated with, probably a bit like you, Glenda, people that graduate with those type of degrees went into different industries. They went into marketing or banking or whatever. And it was very unusual at the time that you would stay in the fitness industry. So I did. And then I became a sales trainer on the side, and then started training sales literally internationally, the US, Mexico, Brazil, Iceland, all over Europe. And along with that, I started to go to IHRSA. I actually had got my first IHRSA convention as a bonus for sales.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's over 30 years ago. And went to Washington, and then kept going to IHRSA conferences and conferences in the UK, and then started to speak on sales and marketing. That was probably 16, 17 years ago. I must have done something right, because I was asked to go back again. But since then, I've done a lot of sales and marketing training, consultancy, and then running the organization that I run as well. So that's where my career came. But I did like everybody else. I taught the spinning, taught the aerobics, high impact aerobics, instructor on the floor before the word personal trainer even came about.
Yeah.
So that was really it. And then I ended up taking over the company I'm with now, which is the Westwood clubs in Dublin, and still heavily involved with IHRSA. Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of IHRSA, because I think that's your role there is probably the bigger one, or the most important one for our listeners necessarily, because we obviously in the UK see UK Active as our sort of spokespeople, rightly or wrongly. How does IHRSA fit into the sort of international, and how does that all work? Because I think a lot of people get confused with all the different organisations.
Well, you see, probably with me, what happened was I kind of skipped the Irish Trade Association. I was probably quite ambitious that I wanted to learn the absolute best I could about sales and marketing.
Yeah. And
that's why I continued to go to the US and bring back what they were doing over there. And there's no doubt they were very good on the sales and marketing. So that's how I ended up going to IHRSA. And probably at the time, I didn't even realize 30 years ago what IHRSA was. It was just a convention. But IHRSA's thing is, it's obviously, you know, a world trade association for the global fitness industry, and they represent clubs in countries all over the world, from China to Australia to US, Canada, Europe. I think it's about 90 countries at this stage.
Wow.
I mean, IHRSA's mission is to grow, protect, and promote the fitness industry. Now, there's no doubt that particularly in the US now, they are moving more towards an advocacy trade association. And more of its effort and time and resources to go into advocacy to protect the players in the fitness industry. And there's no doubt COVID has probably driven that home more, that it's more important than ever now. But, you know, when I go to IHRSA, I meet people from all over the world. I mean, you know, from every country in Europe, and I've done work with a lot of those companies. But it would see itself as a trade association. It's a not-for-profit, very much providing education. For years, it's providing education through conferences, through the IHRSA Institute, through the European Congress. So different people go to IHRSA conventions for different reasons. Some people just go for the trade show and they want to see what's the latest thing. Other people go because they want to get the education. And then a lot of people are members of IHRSA for networking, and then particularly the US for the advocacy side of things. IHRSA would like to do more on advocacy around the world, but that's far more challenging. So it doesn't see itself, you know, as, you know, Europe active is there, Ireland active is there, UK is active is there. I've just personally always wanted to be part of the bigger picture in the US, and that's probably it. And then, of course,
I was just thinking about a couple of things you said there, because I think it's really important as well, Ryan, that we do a shout out to IHRSA on our podcast, because we were very busy understanding how we could protect clubs through the pandemic. But IHRSA, being a not-for-profit, has done a phenomenal job to protect themselves, because it's been so tough for the people that work there. And one thing in my work with IHRSA and understanding what they do, I think there's just so much passion and so much commitment from the people that do that to keep that on track to help us as a sector. I think that should have a huge shout out, really. You know,
absolutely. I think it's just interesting to see, because obviously you have IHRSA who sits there sort of globally, and a lot of the stuff you see them doing campaign-wise tends to be US-based. So they're obviously campaigning the Senate and whatever to get funding. And obviously then the UK is UK active and Ireland active and so on. And it's just interesting for our listeners to try and understand where everybody, all the different players fit in globally, and whether IHRSA is one they should be involved in, or whether it should be UK active or so on. So it is interesting to understand the sort of powers that play and protect us.
I think what Alan makes very clear, though, Ryan, which is really important, is that any operator should really want to see the sector from a global perspective.
Yes.
And understand what's going on around the world in terms of good practice, so that they can really learn from the best. I think what IHRSA is doing now with their research on how the sector can impact mental health is absolutely massive. They're pulling together a piece of research at the minute about how clubs are engaging in that area and the strategies that they're using to help people stick at exercise, which when those findings come out, they could be super impactful for the industry, because it's a big opportunity moving forward to really understand, you know, fitness from a much more holistic point of view. And I think that we need to really keep putting that message out there about the quality of the research that's coming out. It's really great.
And you know, Glenda, over the years, and it's not just now I'm saying this because I'm the chair of IHRSA, the companies I worked with would never have been as successful. They probably wouldn't be around today if it hadn't been for the business knowledge they got from IHRSA. They really wouldn't. I mean, you know, we all started in the day when we were hobbyists who got involved in the fitness industry. There was no approach to it from a business perspective, unless you were one of the big players. So in the early days of sales and marketing and management and retention and programming, all of that came for Westwood clubs and the clubs I worked with from IHRSA. And you say, Glenda, it was getting this best practice. Even if it wasn't best practice, you were getting the views of other big players from around the world. Not just about running clubs, but what is the industry? Who is the customer? How do you serve them? What are they looking for? Where's the industry going? And I'd use IHRSA manuals on my desk when I'm putting together marketing plans, and still do today. IHRSA is a huge educational resource for people who work in the industry, and now they've opened up where they may have made a mistake over the years is probably, and I don't think it was intentional, position is only for the big type of clubs. Where
Yeah.
they're opening up that to personal training studios, individual trainers, managers of clubs can join IHRSA now and just be a member. You don't even have to own a club. So, and it's not that IHRSA is any different than you. I've been to I've been to FIA. You remember the Fitness in the Association training shows? Go to them to learn, and I'd even just going to the US every year. You'd learn from just going to other, not even the fitness industry, just seeing how people would do things in the US.
Yeah. Great.
I think it's so vast, isn't it? That market in the US as well, so vast and so varied.
Oh yeah,
that you can bring so much to the UK. I mean, you could say the same about Australia. I mean, I remember working with Fitness First, and everything we did with Fitness First came from Australia. From a sales perspective, they were animals, absolute animals. Everything got shipped to us from Australia. We got sick and tired of hearing the Aussies do this, the Aussies do that. Bit like the cricket. The Aussies, you know what I mean? That we just got it rammed down our throat all the time. But it was because it was great, and I guess the same can come from the US. If you're part of IHRSA, you're able to pick up that huge worldwide knowledge base and implement it into your business. So definitely worth even independent clubs looking at.
I will say as well, though, Ryan, is when you do travel abroad, it doesn't mean that they do everything brilliantly out there all the time. And people ask me, that are brilliant. I said, look. It's no different than the UK, Ireland, Australia, the US. There are very good players who do things really well and have been around for 25 or 30 years.
So true.
There's companies that do it terribly and go out of business within 2 or 3 years. And we get many clubs that come from the US to come over to see us. So, you can learn an awful lot, but I've learned a lot from other countries as well. And, I've been to Russia and you see the way some of them run their clubs, and they're really, really good too,
Yeah, it's great. Really amazing. What a story, how that all unfolded. Just shows you are.
Just a quick one on that then. As you've seen the world as it is, Alan, how do you think COVID's affected things? What sort of things have we do you think we should take on board from the last sort of 20 months with your work with IHRSA as a CEO?
Well, this is where I get a little bit controversial. And
we like controversial, Alan. We like that on our podcast. We need at least one.
What I think I've learned from IHRSA, me personally, or not from COVID, and this is looking at the industry, not Westwood Club. The first thing is, virtual fitness is not going to put brick and mortar clubs out of business.
No, absolutely
not. It ain't going to happen. If anything, my experience is people at this stage are sick and tired of virtual fitness as a full-time way of getting fit.
Yeah.
We live in 3-bedroom houses, 2-bedroom apartments. The best you can do is get a bike and a swing. You don't have treadmills, you don't have bikes, you don't have weights, you don't have other people around you. So the idea that was being churned out that virtual fitness was going to destroy brick and mortar clubs is just nonsense, in my opinion.
I think the thing with that, Alan, is as well, what they failed to realise is people were cooped up at home. So it wasn't the fact that everyone was going out to work, then coming home and doing virtual. I mean, I work at home anyway. That's what I do for a living. I choose to. But I need to go somewhere to get out the house. I live in my lounge, in essence. I work in my lounge, as you can see. And you know what I mean? So to live here, other than walking the dog, going to the gym, going to the shops, I live in my lounge, which is not that big. And so when you suddenly then cooped everyone up at home because of COVID, the last thing they wanted to do was then have their gym in their lounge as well. So it worked short term to keep people active. As soon as they were able to get out, bang, they were back.
What we need to be careful of, Ryan, though, I think that people are acknowledging this, is that as we move forward with clubs, though, I think people now don't think it's acceptable that a club doesn't give them anything when they're not in the club. Or, if they can't be there for a few weeks, you just pay your membership and don't get much. So there's some amazing practice out there, though. If you look at what the Anytime guys have done with the Connect app, for example, the app could stand on its own. And I'm sure people would pay, £10 a month for that, but they give it for free. And that just gives all that value added that I think the customer now expects. So I think it's, as Alan says, I think that we're never going to see that take over the bricks and mortar, thank goodness. But I think that you need to still have that in your toolkit, for moving.
Right, Glenda. The thing is, to do it, and obviously the hybrid model, the secret is to do it well. There's so many people not doing it well. As you say, anytime Equinox in the US are doing a really good job with their program. I think they may have actually started before COVID. When I say doing well, it's very polished. It looks fantastic. Everything's professionally done. But, you know, I think what people need to remember, what I, you know, try and talk to people in the industry and clients I work with, you know, people should not forget that in 2019, and this industry is going to, it's not disappearing. It's going to stay huge. It's going to get bigger. You know, if you penetration rates in the US of 20%, 19 or 20%, and in Ireland it's 10 or 11%, that only means growth. You know, you know, if the potential is there, it's there. I mean, if you look at 2019, the health and fitness industry globally was worth 97 billion. And that was a jump from 67 billion in 2009. So there's a huge jump. But even if you look at the wellness industry that everybody's talking about now, we're talking about an industry worth $4.2 trillion.
Wow.
And even the healthy eating and nutrition and weight loss, 702 billion. These are huge industries that did not exist 30 years ago. I mean, even yoga today, the US, I mean, I saw the growth in yoga, $11.5 billion worth. I mean, that's up from, you know, 6.9 billion in 2012. The US personal training industry is booming. So nearly all of these people are doing in locations. COVID came along, and the real thing for me with COVID is, as far as clubs is, it's where you were before COVID. You know, I don't want to kind of minimize the impact. If you didn't have cash reserves, if you had huge borrowings, you didn't have a friendly supplier, if you had your equipment on lease, and you've got all of these bills and you're closed for 9 months, you're in serious, serious trouble. If you didn't, you know, you cash reserves, you could make it through it. And most, in fairness, in Ireland have made it through it. Now, it remains to be seen going forward. But I do think, for me, COVID has taught me more than ever, it is all to do with the structures and systems you had in place before this happened. Did you have good sales? Did you have good marketing? Did you have good retention? Were you obsessed about customer service and, you know, catering to all the different segments? Did you run a fantastic club? Had you a good position in the market? Did you have a strong brand? Yes, you had these difficult times, and it was terrible because you'll never get that money back that you lost when you're closed. But if you made it through that and you came out the other side with those strong systems, it was certainly a lot easier to get back to where you were before.
How did your Westwood clubs, sorry, Glenda, how did your Westwood clubs do? You don't have to give us exact numbers, but did you see a huge drop off, or did you manage to sort of steady the waters a bit and then come out the other end?
I can give you the exact numbers.
Well, it depends whether you want to share them. That's all I was thinking, Alex.
But look, you know, and again, I say this, you know, I'm very much a sales and marketing person. That's what I do. I'm a sales and marketing person. And when people say, what about retention? That usually shows that somebody doesn't know what marketing is, because retention is marketing. It is marketing. But we're obsessed about that. So we had those systems in place, very strong sales system, very strong marketing system. So we knew that once it ended, it wasn't going to be that difficult to get back to where we were. We were at 33,500 members in 6 clubs. We're a premium brand. We charge $599 joining fee, and then 79 or 89.
You still get away with charging a joining fee. Sorry to say like that, but
yes, absolutely.
That is amazing.
Love that. That's right.
I can tell you, I worked with a club recently, and they didn't. And I said, bring in your joining fees. You study marketing, you're going to learn very, very quickly. Pricing is rarely the issue that you think it is. There's a very good book called Priceless. I always recommend people read it. It's by Poundstone, which is a funny name for a guy that writes a book about pricing, and have it on the shelf there. But you know, it talks about, we're obsessed with pricing. Your customer is not as obsessed with pricing that you think he is. I've been charging joining fees. I've been putting them up every year. Now, what I will say to you, if we have offers and special promotions, we have the joining fee to play around with. We never mess with the monthly fee, but we get it. And I put it up again tomorrow. I mean, here, just to give you an idea, Ryan, with pricing, my daughter is an artist. So she's 24, she doesn't live with me. She would get free membership to all our 6 Westwood clubs because she's my daughter. Swimming pools, 23 group fitness studios, 23 tennis courts, all the gym equipment. Pavi Gym, all the cool things that you could want, virtual fitness, the Les Mills Immersive in all her clubs. She can get that. She chooses, and she's not a huge salary, she's an artist, to go to a small gym that you would probably fit into the corner of our cafe and pay €140 a month for 3 classes a week in group PT. So when people tell me about pricing, how are these clubs coming out of the shadows and charging that sort of money? And you built a €20 million fitness centre and you're obsessed, do we have to reduce our prices? It's crazy.
Sorry, Ryan. I was just going to say that's so music to my ears, that, because I just love that message that you're putting out there, in the sense of, you know, people got really obsessed about, you know, taking away the joining fee because they would think that it would make it easy to gain the sales. But the research time and time again shows us the high joining fees, the retention, the lifetime value of the customer is definitely a lot bigger because they've had to think about the decision. But if you provide what you obviously do, which is high service with really structured processes, I think that's a brilliant example that it can be done.
Sure, I've had people that work for me, Glenda, who went to work for competitors, and part of getting, well, 2 of them, let's make it simple, and one was that they wanted, as part of getting the job, to introduce joining fees, because joining fees make it easier to sell, not harder, because it allows you to do offers, because you can play around with joining fees, you know, you get 50%, which are not messing with your monthly dues.
It's good.
But, you know, joining fees are on the way back in, Ryan. If you go to the US, they're on the way back. They've been on the way back in for several years.
Well, what's driven it down is these budget clubs. I mean, if you watch any of my stuff, I'm not a fan of them. And not because of who they are and what they do. They provide lovely clubs for a really cheap price. But what they did do, they drove down service. And so people got used to having a gym with no service, rented treadmill clubs, and then they weren't willing to pay for it. So when it then came to the clubs that provided amazing service, amazing quality, they just compared price, and that to me had a real big impact on our industry. I think what COVID has done, though, is made people realise that they don't just want rent a treadmill. They want more to it. They want to be serviced when they go in a club. They want staff to speak to them. They want to be people to be attentive. They want the quality to be there. They want all of that comes with clubs like the Westwood, but even independent clubs that are able now, like you say, to charge 140 quid. I mean, I work with a lot of independent clubs. That's what I do as a consultant. That's my market, independent and franchise clubs. And there's a big debate over price in terms of what do we do for 2022? Do we put the prices up? And there's a big debate about it. And ultimately, when you come down to it, is why would you charge less than you are worth? What we are still, even if you charge the prices you guys charge, we are still the cheapest form of entertainment you can buy anywhere. If you use the club regularly 3, 4, 5 times a week, you still cannot go and do anything else for the same value price, even if you charge you 60, 70, 80 pound a month. It's crazy.
But even Glenda, I've looked at your background and it looks like you've been studying for 40 years. She
doesn't do any work, Alan. She just studies. That's what she does.
When you study marketing and you look at it from an academic level, okay, what the problem for a lot of people is they don't, over the years, when you haven't studied like that, pricing. I'm telling people, when you go to university and you study these things, you learn very quickly pricing is rarely the issue that you think it is. If pricing was everything, BMW, Mercedes wouldn't exist. Armani wouldn't exist. Some of the most profitable companies around the world at the moment are luxury brands who are charging way over the odds for what something costs, and people are prepared to pay for it.
But so, your daughter's example, Alan, when you said there about she chooses to pay to go and do 3 classes, I think the challenge in our industry is because people see what everyone else is doing, although it's critical to be aware of what your competitors are doing and understand the market. It's all about confidence in how you position yourself. I think there's a place for the cheat club because I like that the cheat club got people into exercise from the sofa. You know, a sedentary person wants to maybe pay cheap money and get started, but there's always progression, isn't there? It's like some people will progress, some will go back.
And choice people have. I have never had a problem with the budget club. To be honest with you, I have 2 budget clubs at the entrance to my club. And I'd rather have budget clubs than high price clubs, because budget clubs make it easy if you position yourself in the market, because people simply go, they're the budget, they're the high price, and they have a choice. I want to go there. And you know what? Let's be perfectly honest. There's nothing wrong with the budget clubs.
They get people
go
started.
there and do the same workout, your treadmill, your bikes, your weights, if you'd committed to doing it. And some of these budget clubs do it very, very well. Like we have Fly Fit and Bed done in Dublin. They do a fantastic job. Now I think it's getting more difficult to keep it at that price. But I know people that have trained there for years and they choose, and then maybe 2 years later they decide, look, I want to go to a Westwood, or I want to go somewhere else, or I want to go to a personal training studio, and I have no problem with it all. And like what you say, Glenda, I would be far more interested in what we're doing than what they're doing.
Yeah, you need to keep abreast, but I think it's confidence in what your offer is and how you stand out. I mean, F45 is a great example of we're going to come into the UK and charge a completely different price point, because we are confident in I think they're all about results, aren't they? The people that do their challenges do get big results, and people.
That and David Beckham.
yeah. That helps. Yeah, and Mark Wahlberg or whatever he's ambassador. Yeah.
What 3 a.m. workouts that Mark Wahlberg does?
Yeah,
he can keep his 3 a.m. workouts.
Yeah, I agree, Ryan.
so let's just run on to your Westwood clubs then, Alan. In terms of, obviously you've been there right from sales all the way through now to running the organisation. How's that gone? How did that transpire in terms of sticking with them? Was it 16 years, 17 years or something you've been with them?
Well, again, it's the sales and marketing team. When I went into Westwood Club, they were in a bad situation, and like everything else, they've been around for years. They had a strong brand, and there was less competition in their early days. They new competition coming up in the UK. Total Fitness came in, opened up right beside their 3 clubs, and what's interesting is once you go into a situation like that and you put in a professional sales and marketing system, you can turn things around very, very quickly. Yeah. Retention, I always feel sorry for people that are responsible for retention, because whatever retention strategy you put in, you tend not to see the results till, 12, 24, 36 months down the road when it becomes part of the way you do things. Well, when you have strong sales and marketing and you put those systems in place, you can very quickly, where, a club is selling 300 memberships a month, can be selling 500 memberships a month, and then people think you can do anything. It's not true. It's just you have the systems. So we grew that then to whatever it was, 21,000 members. Then all of our competitors went out of business then. Total Fitness, Jackie Scout, they all disappeared in the recession. The recession was tough, 8 years. But we used things like direct marketing, digital marketing, sales systems, sales management, really building up databases, and all of the professional stuff that you would do in marketing. So we grew it then, and we bought out the last competitor, was Crunch. So today we 33,500 members. Very big on group fitness. Group fitness is a big part of what we do. We have 23 studios. As far as the clubs, they're your typical, big box clubs, tennis and so. We have 2 types of models. There's the 3 big ones, which are tennis, swimming, huge gyms, group fitness, put about 4,500 people through classes a month. Premium price. Then we have 3 that are kind of smaller, 30,000 square feet, and they'd have swimming in that, but they wouldn't have tennis, and they're around the 3,000, 3,200 members per club, and the big ones would be anything like our Clontarf club is 11,000 members.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's hugely successful. But again, it's this daily implementation of sales and marketing systems, good management. And it's just like, when people ask me what's a success, say run it like you'd run a normal service organization, your Ritz-Carlton, your Disney.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with studying those companies as opposed to the fitness industry.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to digital marketing, I look at what other industries and other successful industries have done using digital marketing as opposed to the fitness industry. And I've always done that.
Nice.
I know my sales from other industries. But as far as COVID, we're back to, and I don't like saying this because people say really, and we're not like that. So we're back to about 98%.
Wow.
Of pre-COVID figures, and our suburban clubs One of them's at 107%, one's at 101%, and the other at 98%. The city clubs are slower to come back because people aren't back at work yet. But we're lucky that the suburban ones are the big ones.
Alan, surely we've missed a trick though with COVID, when we know now that there is a major link between COVID outcomes, your health and fitness, and obesity. Surely that's a bit of a shame that the global environment has not helped our case in a stronger fashion, you know, because we are a preventative measure. And the thing is, years and years ago, we used to say that, but we struggled to hang it to something. Yeah. But the absolute evidence has proved that if you are unfit and you are obese and you are struggling with COVID, your outcomes are generally a lot worse.
I read 70% of COVID deaths, the person was obese, 70%.
Alongside some comorbidities sometimes, but that will have come potentially from lifestyle, yeah.
You know, what's interesting, Glenda, is, you know, and you know, we all remember when we were starting in the industry, and governments, health authorities, medical professions were espousing and talking about the medical benefits of regular exercise. Even before they talked about the gym, I worked with Professor Richard McKay. You must run, you must exercise, you must not smoke, you must eat well. And there was billions spent on educating the public about the benefits of exercise as a preventative health measure. Yeah. And that went on for years and years and years. And then you have these entrepreneurs in the fitness industry who build these incredible facilities. And they were entrepreneurs that took risks. They put in incredible facilities, amazing staff. Staff are better educated than they ever were before. When I started a 3-month fitness course, today they're coming out with master's degrees in sports science. So all of this happened over the years. They told everybody, you need to exercise. And that they did not give the support to the people to provide those facilities when it was needed. Remember, in the public sector, you know, and I have kind of a grudge against some of the public clubs. They're funded by taxpayers. They throw a ton of money at them. They never go out of business. And then you have these entrepreneurs who, you know, make money some other way, and they provide these amazing facilities. Yeah. And I said, I was on with the World Health Organization recently. They're very good. And they said, look, there is this kind of looking at private fitness clubs as if there's some sort of, they're only in it for the money and they only want, which is just ridiculous. I have seen hundreds of thousands of people get healthy, get fit, get slim, get confident in commercial fitness clubs. And when you're working, because I work very closely, I keep my office on the floor, and I see these people who've lost, you know, I've somebody going up now with testimonies, lost like 100 pounds. And that's a huge, huge benefit that our industry is. And yet when it came to COVID, closed them down. Now, I'm not the expert. Maybe in years to come, they'll say, look, it had to happen for a short period of time. I don't know, and you don't want to knock it too much. But to close an industry down in Ireland for 5 months at the start of 2005 or 2021 was tough. When we know, and I think another thing, Glenda, is, and maybe we didn't do a good enough job to explain this to the powers that be. The truth is, it's not like the pub or the restaurant. We know that the vast majority of people that go to a gym do not sit down and talk to somebody face-to-face for 15 minutes. The vast majority go on the treadmill, lift their weights, don't get into too much conversation. And when you went to the gym, you can very, very easily avoid getting into contact with other people. You don't want to go to showers, that's fine. But you know, when you're in a restaurant or pub, and they've suffered badly as well, but part of the product is you sit opposite somebody and you talk to them for 15, 20 minutes, an hour. So I don't believe
context. I guess in the wider context, though, I feel like it's been a bit of a public health disaster, though.
Yeah.
Because, you know, whether you, and it's a completely different argument, but whether vaccine is only one part of the puzzle. And I think we are a really big part of the puzzle for the future, because if we're going to be living with COVID and we're going to be living with other strains that pop up over the next few years, they have shown unequivocally that if you invest in your health and fitness, and really I'm disappointed in governments that they're not selling that message more.
You know, Glenda, I was saying when this all started, and again I was saying with IHRSA as well, and it was on a board meeting, and this is the very start, March, April, you were trying to say to the US, look, because they were after us really, and say, look, this is what's coming down the road. mean, at the time, you remember Italy, they closed down everything. And I said,
Yeah.
you know, they're not all stupid people in Italy. They don't just close all these businesses for no reason. And I remember saying to them was, look, here's the problem that you have when government are going to make decisions. There's some civil servants ticking boxes to decide what business stays open and stays closed. If you take it that 10% in Ireland and maybe 12 or 13% in the UK are members of health clubs, that means if there's 10 people in the room making a decision what stays open, stays closed.
You've got one.
You've got one person who's
Yeah,
doing
what a
at
nightmare.
best two, and 8 people might be going, well, that's just a sweaty place where everybody works out and they're just into their body.
You're right. You're so right.
Yeah, you know, they're not looking at housewives and mature people. And you remember 20 years ago, we were trying to really work hard to persuade older generations, why wouldn't we, to come into the clubs?
Yeah.
I mean, I spoke to somebody recently, Glenda, at a very high level, you know, in an organization globally to do with health. And they thought that the fitness industry should do more to attract women. And when I said to them, they were shocked and said, when I started in the industry, 65% of members were women. The hardest job was actually to get men into the gyms.
Yeah.
They just couldn't believe that we were already catering to this.
Yeah. So, Alan, just as a real positive then, despite that challenge, because we could talk about that, and I think we're all advocacy, shouting for that advocacy for our industry, and we need to do as much as we can to keep using that in our marketing efforts, because it's a really good way of people understanding that they can protect themselves. What do you see as the big opportunities then in the sector for the next, 36 months? What do you think? Where's it going, and what can we get dead excited about?
See, the thing with me, Glenda, is I don't think it's all changing as much as people think. I think, look at the big picture. 20% penetration in the US, 10 or 12% over here. Some European countries that's still at 3-4%.
Yeah.
Huge potential there for fitness. And the demand for fitness is not, it's like IT. The demand for IT is not going away. Yeah. I mean, the last crash. Demand for fitness. People will always want to be fitter, healthier, slimmer, stronger, more attractive. And the thing that's helping the industry, even though some people like to knock them a bit, and it's something that's happening in tandem with COVID. So you have COVID happening. You know, when you look at marketing, and you know this, Glenda, you talk about it, any business operates in a marketing environment that they've no control over. The technological, the economic, the political, the legal, all of these things happen that you don't have a control over, which you're trying to operate. COVID is another element that we haven't been used to that you're trying to operate. Now, when you're closed. But I think in tandem with that, even leaving aside COVID, if COVID didn't happen, there was a huge amount happening with influencers on social media, on YouTube, that's bringing a new cohort of people into fitness. Now, it might be, and I have no problem with that, for, you know, looks or, you know, vanity, but those people are going into clubs. There's no doubt I see it because my daughter hangs around with people at that age. More than ever, they're seeing being a member of a gym and going to a gym, or even if they haven't started yet, is a part of what people do. It's like, you know,
the younger age group, definitely, Alan. I mean, my son's 16, and all of his mates, it's what they do now. And that when I was a kid, we played sport. It wasn't the gym. I got into the gym in my 20s when I started in the industry, but it was all sport. But now they're all. He plays cricket, but it's gym.
The pub industry in Ireland, there's pubs closing down. That would never have happened years ago. Nothing to do with COVID, but people are spending more and more time in the gym. So, you know, and I say this to people, the fitness industry is going to boom. There are more providers, and it's becoming a little bit more segmented and fragmented, which is a good thing. You know, you have the yoga studios, the Pilates studios, and I have no problem with any of them once somebody's doing exercise and moving. So I do see the industry booming. And the question will be is what players will be there.
And I think what you're seeing, Alan, already, I've seen it myself, is that people are now taking multiple memberships because the younger generation, if they get something that they perceive as value, they're happy to spend. So I've seen people now who are buying a membership of what I call a big box gym. And then they've got their boutique studio membership on the side so that they can get the fusion style class alongside, you know, the David Lloyd type experience health club. And I know they do classes and they do it really well, but I've seen a lot of people now who are taking 2 memberships and combining them, which is quite interesting.
There's a project happening in Portsmouth at the minute with a guy called Dan Till, and he's actually getting the clubs together because there's so many people apparently in Portsmouth that are members of different clubs that he's trying to bring it. Go, okay, you join this, you pay so much, and then obviously he spreads the money out, a bit like he's trying to disrupt the market a little bit, but it's quite a clever idea that you have one membership that you can use all these different clubs.
Like
clubs get paid out. Yes, it's a similar idea. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes. He's got potentially huge backers from some Middle Eastern country if the trial goes well. But it just goes to show that more people are interested in this. I don't know, train at your martial arts club, but also at the Westwood, for instance, and you've got this real mix of two or three clubs.
I think as well, for me, with the future is, and I'd say this to any of the young people entering the industry or anybody entering the industry, the real demand will be professional management, professional sales, and approaching it from a business perspective. That's where the future will be. Is if you just think you're going to open a club and you're going to do it a bit, but and that hasn't changed. That's the same before COVID. Those clubs that were successful ran them like a normal business would run their organization. Yes. Who is your customer? What industry you're in? How will you provide service? What's your product? How will you differentiate yourself? How will you build a brand? How will you position yourself in the market? And if you come in from that approach, and I see it even with our company, you know, years ago, anybody would work in the gyms, but nowadays you see a lot of people working in the industry that have degrees in management, degrees in marketing, and especially the young people. They're all coming out with the same meeting, but there's that level of more of a business acumen. They still need to get that training, but I think those clubs. But I certainly wouldn't be worried. I mean, when I say I wouldn't be worried, Ryan, I mean, if this Omicron takes off and they close us again for another 4 months, there's a lot of clubs that will not survive that. They just
there's a lot with too much debt. I mean, my brother's got a club, and it's doing okay, but he basically said if they shut us again, I'm going back to work because he's his martial arts, but he comes from he used to work on the roads and site management and that sort of stuff, and he just basically said, I'm not taking on any more debt.
At the risk of not being too controversial, something that really just jumped out at me this morning, though, is where's Delta gone, though? Is that on vacation or something? Like, Delta...
It's gone to the Maldives with you, Glenda. That's where it went. Apparently when you get one, the others disappear. That's weird, isn't it?
Alan, I want to pick your brains on something because you are an absolute sales and marketing beast, right? And... Ryan and I talk about this a lot, though. I feel that when I was in the industry as a very young professional, we had the really famous people like your Casey Conrads. Who was the guy, Miller, with the ponytail, who I love? Doug, right? So we had all these industry titans, yourself, who were always about the heavy emphasis on training on sales. It's really weird because I've seen recently a lot of people getting jobs and they seem to go into the business and they've not been taught, the fab tour, the price presentation, the trial closes. Do you think that needs to come back up again, or do you think it is there?
What you see, Glenda, is I get asked all the time, people are saying sales is not as important. And I answered it always like this. If my competition asks me, I agree with you 100%. Sales is not that important. Don't invest in sales training. Certainly don't build a database that you could use in 2 or 3 years down the road. It's a waste of time. And I wouldn't be wasting money on SEO or anything like that. You just need to deliver a good service and everything will be absolutely fine. Yeah. The truth is, John McCarthy from IHRSA said this, and I have great respect for John. He wrote a great report years ago, and I said, this is inherently a retail sales business. And clubs without a retail sales culture will not and cannot succeed in this industry. And I believe that. The problem for some people is when they see the word sales, they have this perception. It's like it's the devil's work.
Yeah. But we don't like it in this country, Alan. We don't like it in Britain itself, Britain, Ireland, or this little place we've got. We hate that idea of, we hate customer service. Let's be honest. You go to America, and
they're
don't get me
brilliant.
wrong, I haven't been offered, but you go to America and they're all over you, and you still go, why would you not love someone giving you attention? I don't get it. Someone who's really brash and giving. I love that idea. I love that. I don't love everything about the Americans, trust me, but I love that element of the fact they want to give service. Where in this country, you try to give service and people back off. And the same is with sales. I think they have that perception. Oh, I'm going to be sold to. I need to hide. And you just like that. Embrace it, enjoy it. It's the
secret of selling, Ryan, is though the real secret of selling is that it's done in a way that you never appear to be a salesperson.
Absolutely.
If someone sees you as a salesperson, you probably got it wrong.
Yeah.
But the quick answer I'd give you, Glenda, people constantly ask me, how do you have 11,000 members in one club charging those fees? And I say to them, look, I'd love to give you the long-winded strategic planning process. It's not. It is a 365-day sales system that we have in place. We've got marketing automation. We provide, before you ever step into sales, you're getting 5 days classroom-based sales training. You're doing role play on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah.
And we put as much time and effort into retention. Probably we need to put more into that. But the way we look at it is we have members in the facility and we have marketing going on. We do this sales, but we invest a huge amount of that money back into the club to deliver a fantastic service to members.
Amazing.
But without those sales, you don't have the revenue to do that.
Yeah.
And with a natural churn as well, Alan, because it doesn't matter how good your club is, you've got people leaving out the back door. You know what I mean? You could be the best club in the world. You are going to have some attrition.
Absolutely.
And so if you're not a sales animal or a sales business, it's just going to, without, even if you're brilliant.
Ryan, there's one other thing I think that we sometimes are reluctant to do. We have a habit sometimes of always recruiting people in fitness, though. And I've seen recently so much more success with certain clubs who have recruited, for example, retail experts or people who are not necessarily fitness trained, because you can train skill, you can't train attitude. But I think that sometimes we stick too far in, or there must be a gym instructor or qualified, or whereas I think that for the sales membership, sales advisor role, we should be getting, we should just take the best person for the job, whatever sector they've come from. If they come with a sales focused background, that's just perfect, I don't think we do that enough.
I think the market changed a little bit though. A lot of the independent clubs and smaller clubs, and if you look at the franchises, they went to this model where they had less staff,
and they're doing everything.
You effectively had a cleaner, a personal trainer, a salesperson,
I don't agree with that. I think,
and as a smaller club, that's where the industry's gone. I mean, obviously with the Westwood clubs, I can imagine you've got reception, sales, personal training,
and that's a very good point, Ryan. Yeah, there, when I talk about sales, and I do a lot of sales training around the world, and people say, if you're charging $15 a month, you can't have a sales team. If your model is to have 1,200 members, it's very difficult to have a dedicated sales team. So, we're big clubs, and I can tell you, we spend about 1.4% of our revenue on sales team. So we know our figures really, really well, and that it's worth it. But in regard to who we hire, I can tell you, Glenda, every one of our salespeople has a fitness background.
That's good.
And in a way, what it does is they nearly all come from it internally, and it's more of a strategic thing in that it gives fitness instructors the opportunity to move into a more business role in the company, and their salary can go up 60, 70, 80%. Wow. So that kind of path where you're going from, you're 11 euros an hour to, maybe working there 2 years. Now, there's a very intensive interview process that they can do this, and all of our sales managers in the last 17 years have come up through the ranks. So by the time they move to sales management, they know our structure, they've been to the training 25 times. But
it's like the DNA of your culture, isn't it?
Yes.
You can hear that in everything that you say, though, that you've built a culture where that is seen as just normal operating procedure.
And I think the other thing, Glenda, is with the fitness people that we hire, the reason being is we don't want it to look like a sale. If you walk into us, Glenda, and say, I've got high blood pressure, I've got a bad back, I haven't exercised in 20 years, I don't know the difference between a dumbbell and a sit-up, Well, we can say to you, look, Glenda, they act like personal trainers giving free advice. Say, here's what you need to do. And we use phrases in our sales, you know, Glenda, if you want to go to that club, who's our competitor, no problem at all. Here's ideally what you should do when you get there. So there's that type of a friendly sale. But we have had people outside, but our fit sales process is very much on finding out what you would like to achieve and then explaining in a non-salesy way the best way to go about that. So if you decide to do it in your own home, that's absolutely fine. And then there's a process in the sales where we persuade you that we're going to do it. But what Ryan is saying there is if you're a budget club, and, you know, let's be honest, the budget club model is you sell your membership online. You simply can't afford to have dedicated salespeople in the club.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of messages there though, because what I was really getting at was, I think that you should be open to bringing anybody in and training them, is what I'm saying. They don't necessarily need to come in level 2 trained on day one, just purely from the fitness industry. I've seen so much success lately where they've brought them in from another sector, trained them up, gave them the knowledge, like you say, Alan, even a basic level 2 fitness instructor qualification where they can have those conversations. But I think like what you're really saying to anyone out there, whether you've got the luxury of a sales team or it is someone that does multiple jobs, you've got to make it part of the culture. It's got to be the conversations. It's got to be the training. It's got to be a big priority for the business. And I think that's a brilliant message for our listeners.
Oh, absolutely. And probably a really good one to sort of finish on.
Yeah.
Other than, we like to ask all our guests, Alan, in terms of who their inspiration is. So I guess we're going to ask you the same question. So in your experience, 30 plus years, who would you say is your biggest inspiration? Well, it could be new, could be someone back, could be other than your parents. You can't say your parents. Who would you say is your biggest influence?
You know, I'm a huge reader, so you know, I'm influenced by a lot of people, and not necessarily in the fitness industry. There's a guy who I started reading years ago, and he's a copywriter in the US, Gordon Herschel Lewis. So if I tell you, I went to university for 5 years to study marketing, and then I left university and learned about marketing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
You read books on them in university, and because you're studying, you hate it. And when you leave, when I was at university, it was all about branding and positioning, and they hated direct response marketing. Direct response marketing was the low level. But when I came out of college, university, you learned that these are hugely profitable tools. Yeah. But I read Gordon Herschel Lewis, I've read all his books, and about the power of words and copywriting and everything. So I've used his stuff. I'm a huge fan of Peter Drucker. I've read everything.
You can't beat it.
Drucker was an absolute genius in management. I think there's people making money today that rehash what he wrote, give it a fancy title. And I always say, look, that's Peter Drucker. You know, Peter Drucker was writing some amazing management books 60 years ago.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I still love his, you know, you plan to fail. You know, like, how will that ever date? You know what I mean?
And it's his other one too. The only purpose of a business is to create a customer. That's it. How is
that ever going to go out of fashion, right?
And then he'd have other quotes like, he used to say, no employee owes any employer loyalty. It is unconscionable that you would think an employee would owe an employer loyalty. An employee is paid to do a job. You should pay them. They should do good work. If they do great work, you pay them more. But this idea that employees should be loyal to me is just nonsense.
Yeah.
Who really inspires me these days, and I'll be honest, it's some of the young entrepreneurs in the fitness industry. More than anybody, I see these people who probably coming from very little, they're taking risks at a very young age. They're entering the fitness industry easier than ever before, because when we did it, you needed $1 million or $2 million to open up a fitness club. These people are going out. No, they're opening up a little small personal training studio, starting with 2 clients and 4 clients. Then suddenly they get to 3 locations, and they don't pay much attention to what we're doing. They do what they do, and I've seen some of them do well. I've seen some of the influencers who are making, you know, there's a young, and again, it's outside the fitness. There's a young guy lives outside Dublin here, and he's in the gaming industry. He made 29 million last year on advertising. And
massive opportunity.
Young entrepreneurs really inspire me because they seem to have more nerve than we ever had years ago. And I think fair play to them. People say to me, do you worry about them as competition? Absolutely not. So some of these people work for me. They're still my friends. I did work for me. And when they decided to go on their own, I said, fair play to you. Give it a risk. You've nothing to you. So they inspire me. You know.
Well, look at Ben from Gymshark.
Oh,
I mean, incredible story. And the guy's he's still less than 25, isn't he?
And he's probably going to do another 10 years at least, you know. So it's crazy what he can achieve. Alan, I want to thank you on behalf of our podcast and our readers, because there's so many nuggets in there. You've super inspired me today. Really have. I've got a call after this, so I'm going to absolutely make sure that I close it out and make the sale so that you can be proud of me. And I want to thank you, Alan. It's been brilliant.
Thank you, Glenda. It was an absolute pleasure.